Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Keith Giffen Day. We're taking a look at the latest Darkness saga installment in the Legion of Superheroes, issue number 292, cover dated October 1982. Keith Giffen, definitely an artistic chameleon, channeling more of a DC house style in this series here, almost reminiscent of maybe like a George Perez or someone like that, and throwing in some Marvel elements here and there just to keep things interesting, like the Kirby crackle that we see here. We're going to be introduced to a baby character in this issue. Gotta say, Keith Giffen here, not very successful in getting across the idea that this is a baby. This almost feels like an adult face stuck on a baby's body, just like I've talked about in the past, John Byrne doing. There's that famous West Coast Avengers issue that people criticize the way he draws, very young babies and children. The trick with children, guys, is they have really big foreheads. Our face tends to grow bigger and wider across our head as we get older, but when we're babies, it's very much concentrated at the bottom half of our face. So a very much smaller chin here would help, and bringing those eyes down lower and having the forehead be a lot bigger. Let's have a look inside. I'm always into how, each individual artist will draw technology, right, or sci-fi kind of elements. Keith Giffen, definitely, when we were looking at the Defenders, was going at it from the kind of Jack Kirby school, mixed in with a little bit of Steranko here. I feel like he's come into his own and is creating his own kind of technology here, probably originally based on that Kirby stuff, but making it his own, which is somewhat reminiscent as well of how John Byrne does it, in my mind. Paul Levitz is the writer, Keith Giffen and Larry Malstead are artists, John Costanza letterer, and Carl Gafford is the colorist. So last issue, some of the Legion members had to go stop a prison break on on a prison planet, and here basically they're helping to imprison those prisoners once again. A lot of B and C story in this Legion comic. Of course it's a monthly thing, so you've got to acknowledge what's happened in the past, and some of these elements just not really affecting the main storyline that I'm here for. A little bit annoying to me, and I gotta say, today in modern comics we talk a lot about decompressed storytelling, where it seems like something that could be told in 1, 2, or maybe 3 issues are kind of spread out and laid out across 6, 7, 8 issues. Kind of like, spreading the peanut butter too thin on your toast. And that's a lot of modern writers are accused of that. I would accuse Paul Levitz of this in this series here. The focus shifts away from the Great Darkness saga all throughout the book, and it is kind of annoying to me. A lot of text to read too, kind of indicative of early 80s comics in general, and maybe why I'm not such a fan of it. The main reason I am looking at this is Keith Giffen art and Darkseid's involvement. And I get the sense that we're only really going to get to see Darkseid in the last installment of the story, so kind of annoying to get through, honestly. Some of the tech too, I think, is, this is post Star Wars, so I feel like this here definitely is inspired by some of that, Star Wars kind of technology and ship making, the Death Star, right? And which in turn was influenced by 2001: A Space Odyssey, which influences all sci-fi, I think. So Dream Girl has had a vision that, they're going to be defeated by the Servants of Darkness on this wizard planet. I forget if it's called that, which is kind of a fun thing where as they show up to the planet, because it's a bunch of magic and wizards and stuff, the landscape keeps shifting and changing. So it's very surreal. And then all of a sudden, it's described as the cities are riding waves. Kind of interesting visuals for sure. I like this creature here because, again, I do feel like there's a lot of Kirby inspiration there and a little bit of maybe New Genesis in the New Gods, right? Anytime I see some Kirby-esque stuff, I get excited. So as they're flying into the atmosphere of this planet, they are attacked once again. What I'm going to call a boom tube, because they don't call it that yet. They don't know, but that's basically what it is. Just like in the New Gods, how they would, travel from New Genesis or Apocalypse to Earth. And then, boom, the Servants of Darkness show up. I've mentioned in past reviews that I feel like this character here is more than likely Orion. I hope he'll be revealed as that, right? Because these guys are serving the Master of Darkness, who hasn't yet been revealed, but we know is going to be Darkseid. And, I wasn't too sure about these other characters and who they might be. I can't really point to a large domed big head character from the New God series, excuse me. And this guy with the cape, my best guess would be the Black Racer. Other than that, I don't know. Maybe Mr. Miracle, I guess. Not quite sure who that could be. But then in this issue, I feel like this character with the beard and the hair And this stick kind of weapon is pretty distinctive. So I'm going to guess, if you know anything about the New Gods, that this is possibly Kalibak, right? Who is also Darkseid's son and Orion's brother, or half-brother, I believe. So the mystery of who the Master of Darkness is there, but the Servants of Darkness too, there's a mystery as to who they are as well. Some interesting sequences here where the character gets thrown into like I guess a man-eating plant here. I believe his name is Mon-El Valor. Is that his name? His code name. Very reminiscent of Superman, right? I think he's a Kryptonian from the future or something like that. I don't quite know, but he's got powers similar to Superman. So he's using his freeze breath here on one of the Servants of Darkness. Anytime he brings in this kind of spacey element and the Kirby crackle, I think it looks really good. Here he confronts, he goes through the boom tube and confronts their master. And he says, oh my God, you're... So he recognizes him, but doesn't have time to say his name out loud as the master pushes him back out of the boom tube. Get a glimpse here of the master. And again, all in shadow with very little highlights. But more and more it's being revealed that he resembles Darkseid, right? Another cool shot with some tech here. I think that works really well. Very Stanley Kubrick in that it's very centered and symmetrical. These color holds here, just like the last issue, feel a little weak. So I don't know if that's a production issue, but the lines are just a little bit hard to read. You can hopefully probably still see it on the camera, but just a bit of a production snafu there with these diagrams. Finally, on Sorcerer's World is what it's called. They finally meet the sorcerers and explain to them that they feel like the final conflict is going to happen here, as Dream Girl had a vision of the final conflict against the Servants of Darkness, and that the Legion and the sorcerers would lose that fight. And yeah, this is kind of the section where I feel like, some of the storylines being stretched out way too much. We could get through a lot of this exposition much quicker. Visually, I don't find anything, too interesting to write home about, honestly, on these few pages. So we're just going to skip through and get to the more interesting stuff. I've said before that this kind of silhouette look that he's been doing in these past issues with just a bit of like light highlights, I think is very interesting and works pretty well. But yeah, this issue is just more of the same, really, with the Legionnaires, taking on the Servants of Darkness. This is what we've been seeing for the past few issues. So just, feels a lot, like I said, more of the same, and a bit of treading water as far as the storytelling goes. I feel like the story could be going a lot faster. So that, again, the idea of decompressed storytelling definitely was present early on in the 80s and not just a modern kind of thing that's going on in comic books. Another shot of this baby that shows up, right? Who they feel is going to help be the savior and help them win against the Servants of Darkness. So who this character is meant to be, I'm not quite sure. My best guess right now is Isak from the New Gods, that young child that I actually talked about in my New Gods review this week, but I don't know for sure. A little more successful in getting across that this is a child here, but I still feel like the eyes and everything are too high up on the face. And it looks more like, a 4, 5, 6-year-old child than a baby. So I'll go through this quickly, just because this is, again, not one of the more interesting issues of the Darkness saga, just more of the same. And I got to say, artistically, I don't think either that this is, the best Keith Giffen stuff. I prefer Keith Giffen when he's writing stuff himself. I feel like, storytelling wise, his stuff moves a lot quicker than what's going on here. And again, because he's kind of doing the DC house style and that aesthetic, I do find his art not quite as exciting as even the stuff he was doing at Marvel as a Kirby clone, and the stuff that he's going to be doing later that I've looked at already. Ambush Bug. Later on, we're going to look at Dr. Fate. Lobo Infanticide is one of my favorites as well. And Trenchers, where I was first introduced to Keith Giffen, and a lot of people complain about the style he had on that. I think it's great, really kind of crazy and out there, and works really well when it's colored properly. I mean, all throughout this book, I will say, especially, again, the visuals look more interesting to me when we get the Servants of Darkness and Darkseid in the background. You get a lot of color holds, a lot of Kirby crackle, color hold silhouettes like we've got here look really cool. This drawing up here, I think, is pretty awesome as well. Sometimes when I see stuff like this, it's much more reminiscent of 70s kind of artwork, maybe European comics, and this kind of delineation and outlines of stuff. I sometimes wonder if that's where Todd McFarlane kind of got some of his ideas of how he interprets contours and does that kind of thing as well. Surely Keith Giffen and McFarlane aren't the only ones to do it, but I think it works to great effect here. So yeah, not the most interesting issue of the Darkness Saga, I gotta say. Once again, that weird looking baby, and now he's almost wall-eyed here. So Keith Giffen really not spending that much time worrying about how the baby looks. And then we get kind of a cool silhouette shot with some screen tone in the background. You know, probably one of the coolest looking images in this whole issue. Definitely memorable. And that's about it for this installment of the Great Darkness Saga. So there you go, guys. That is my quick and succinct review of the Legion of Superheroes issue 292. Hopefully the next two parts of the saga will be a little bit more interesting. I know eventually we're going to get Darkseid introduced, so kind of am waiting for that. And waiting through a bit of decompressed storytelling along the way is a little bit tedious, but, you know, that's, I think, overall, you know, the huge level of dialogue as well through the book is another tedious aspect that's kind of common to these early 80s comics, and probably why I'm not really into them that much. Again, just here for the Keith Giffen art. So there you go, guys. That's my review of Legion of Superheroes 292. If you are still watching and you are subscribed, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you are watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It really helps the channel, helps us grow, and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So everyone, once again, thanks again, and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Like!